It was 3 years ago that Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine and set off one of the most defining conflicts of our time. It was on the 24th of February 2022. That's when Russia launched what it called a special military operation. And this they did by invading Ukraine after opposing Kyiv's plans to join the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO like we know it. So this has triggered this major war, a geopolitical crisis for several countries, and there is no doubt that this war now, after 3 years, is reshaping global geopolitics. It has fractured alliances, it has put enormous pressure on the world economy, and it's by far the bloodiest conflict in Europe since the Second World War. And Ukraine, against all odds, standing its ground with the backing of Western military aid, but the battle, of course, has reached a critical juncture now. Now with Donald Trump back in the White House, there's this big shift in the American stance. Trump's administration initiating direct talks with Moscow, and they've sidelined Ukraine and Ukraine's European allies. Meanwhile, Ukraine's President Zelenskyy says that he's willing to step down if it means securing peace and paving the way for Ukraine's NATO membership. And then on the battlefield, you have Russia, which has ramped up drone attacks and continues to hold key territories that it came to occupy, which raises the question, who really has the upper hand now in this war? For India, of course, the war has been a balancing act. While we have avoided taking sides, our purchase of Russian oil has provided Moscow with this crucial economic support that keeps its war efforts on despite the many sanctions that the West has imposed on Russia. But how does this war and India's stance impact its global positioning? And more importantly, as we mark this third anniversary of the war, are we any closer to finding its end? Joining me tonight to answer these pressing questions is Dr. Rajan Kumar. He's Associate Professor at the School of International Studies at JNU. Good of you to join us this evening, Rajan Kumar, though the subject is somber. 3 years into this war, I'm not sure if there is a decisive shift in favor of either side, Russia or Ukraine, or if we are looking at even more long drawn-out stalemate in this war. But what has changed is that Trump is back in the White House. We are seeing a shift, a volte-face even, in the U.S. approach, the American approach to this war. How has that changed the equation, you think?
I think, this after the Trump administration, the situation has completely changed in Ukraine. And what I see that there is a kind of, the ultimate betrayal, the term used by Francis Fukuyama, a philosopher. So what has happened in the entire process that Ukraine has been sidelined, and Europe, which has been fighting war with Ukraine, not providing military, but otherwise providing all kind of support. So they have also been left out. And Trump has given statements, Trump and his vice president and secretary of state, etc. They have given statements which are completely in favor of Russia. So at this moment, it seems that Russia is placed very favorably so far as geopolitics is concerned, because the Trump administration has said that Ukraine will not be the member of NATO. But Trump administration has never asked Russia to withdraw from the territories that Russia has occupied, and also Ukraine is under immense pressure to sign a deal with the United States, the costing about $500 billion, where US would like to invest in critical minerals, etc., which is there in Ukraine. So at this moment, the Europe is feeling left out. Ukraine is under immense pressure. It also seems that the latest report suggests that probably some kind of deal has taken place between the United States and Ukraine, where Ukraine has agreed to provide access to minerals and the resources that it has. That also means that United States must have given some kind of security guarantee to Ukraine. Ukraine has been asking for the membership of NATO. That, unfortunately, United States has never accepted. And if United States accepts it, Russia will never agree to any kind of ceasefire. But what I see that that situation is very favorable at this moment for Russia. Situation is also favorable for this some kind of ceasefire. There are 2-3 issues. Even today, many of the European leaders are meeting at Kiev, where they want to provide some kind of consolation to Ukraine, saying that they are not leaving Ukraine, and some kind of arrangement for the peacekeeping forces might be possible in the future if United States agrees. But by and large, the situation is there. One positive development. Positive development is that ceasefire is very likely now, because the deal, some kind of deal, has taken place between Ukraine and Trump administration. And the negative part is that Europe has been completely left out, and Ukraine is also signing the deal under pressure.
Yeah.
Ukraine, the ideal deal should have been that Ukraine, at least the minimum that Ukraine was expecting, that it will become a member of NATO. Unfortunately, that is not happening.
Right.
Even the security guarantee is also not very very clear that what kind of guarantee would be given to Ukraine by the Trump administration.
Yeah.
So, in my view, it's favoring Russia at this moment.
It's favoring Russia, and there are chances, like you're suggesting, that this could be a forced settlement that doesn't quite favor Ukraine. But President Zelensky, he said he's willing to step down if it ensures peace and Ukraine's NATO membership. Like you're saying, it's unlikely to come, the NATO membership. But just listen in for a moment to what Zelensky has said.
З останнього, якщо мир для України, якщо вам дуже потрібно, щоб я залишив свій пост, я готовий. Друга історія, можу поміняти це на НАТО, якщо є такі умови одразу, щоб довго про це не говорити. Я фокусуюсь на безпеці України сьогодні, а не за 20 років, і не збираюсь бути у влади десятиріччя. Передусім наших європейських лідерів, бо війна в Україні, ми є частиною невід'ємною цього континенту.
So yes, we heard the president over there. You heard what the Ukrainian president is saying, Professor. How significant is that statement? Does it reflect Ukraine's desperation about finding an end to this war? Or do you think it's a strategic move on his part?
I think, there is a context and chronology to that statement because, just a few days back, Trump said that, he's a dictator. He's the one who started the war, and he has a popularity of less than 5% in Ukraine. So, because of that, there is a there is a sense that probably Trump administration is not happy with Zelensky at all, and the Trump administration is looking for some kind of replacement in Ukraine that Zelensky might go. So, in that context, what he is saying that even if he has to go, if Ukraine, he is willing to go if Ukraine is given the membership of NATO. But unfortunately, the US is not willing to give any kind of statement supporting NATO's Ukrainian membership to NATO. And if Ukraine is given the membership of NATO, then no ceasefire can take place, no negotiation can take place with Russia, because Russia will not accept Ukrainian membership to NATO.
Right.
Russia might accept the membership to European Union, but unfortunately, the European Union, those leaders are also not playing very well because they are also not offering the membership of European Union, which is within the ambit of European leaders to decide.
Yes.
But they are saying that it's the NATO membership, and US will not agree to NATO membership. Even within Europe, there are certain countries which will not support Ukrainian membership to NATO. And once US withdraws from this kind of support, many European leaders will also withdraw that kind of support. So it's a very tricky situation for Ukraine. I feel very sorry for Ukrainian people and also for the Ukrainian state. The sovereignty has been compromised.
Yes.
So many people have been killed. Half of nearly 20-25% people, Ukrainian people, are roaming in Europe in different parts as refugees, and Ukraine.
So you
is
feel they are
what?
left high
Ukraine
and dry by the West? Yes?
Yeah, absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely.
What do you think Putin's game plan is, Professor? He did not get the swift victory that he had hoped for, thanks to the billions of dollars that were pumped in by way of Western aid, which could perhaps now stop. But Moscow's forces, they've slowly expanded the amount of territory under their control, captured 1/5 of Ukrainian land. Was this an endgame in itself, Professor?
No, I think Russia also didn't succeed in its the ultimate motive with the reason it started the war. Russia initially thought that probably it can occupy Kyiv in a matter of few days. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Russia is fighting for the last 3 years, and Russia has a huge military power with the Soviet background, etc. Russia is still not able to defeat Ukraine, and that's a fact. This is despite the fact that NATO didn't send its army to Ukraine. So it's not a kind of victory for Russia, but yes, Russia is happy that at least the capture and the territories that Russia has occupied, and that will not go back to Ukraine now. And that's a kind of savior for President Putin also, because otherwise, the people in Russia would have asked that why did you initiate the war if nothing came to Russia? The idea of Putin was not to occupy the territory. The idea was to kind of humiliate Zelensky and put pressure on Ukraine and not to apply for the membership of NATO, or reject the idea of Ukrainian membership to NATO. So that objective has been achieved. The territory, Crimea, is very important, I can tell you. Crimea, Russia would never have allowed to go back to Ukraine because of nuclear fleet, etc. Other territories, that was not the initial motive. The motive was to create some kind of pro-Russia regime in Ukraine. Unfortunately, that has not happened until now. But Trump administration is also pushing for replacement of Zelensky. If that happens, then probably Russia can play some kind of other kind of political role in Ukraine also.
Tell me, Professor, India has taken this neutral stance, but we continue to buy Russian oil. Has that indirectly strengthened Russia's position in this from the Indian side as well? How is that going to be perceived globally? Because despite economic sanctions, Russia has found ways to sustain its war efforts. How effective actually have those sanctions really been if countries like India have been buying Russian oil?
Well, not much in my view. If you tell me that this decision of capping the price of oil, it was done by the G7 and the Western country, and $60 per barrel was the capping, and India accepted that. India started importing, keeping in mind the cap, etc. And the total trade in the last year, if I can tell you, the total trade between India and Russia, total trade, I'm saying, not just oil and gas, but also the total trade was just $65 billion. Out of that, India imported roughly around 58 or 59 something. So out of, and in that the segment of oil and gas would be very less. So India didn't support that way, but yes, India didn't condemn the Russian aggression in Ukraine. India also didn't, in all United Nations voting, India always either abstained or it never went against Russia in the United Nations voting. And India didn't join the sanctions regime. So all of that kind of says the close proximity that India has with Russia in geopolitical terms, in terms of trade, in terms of India's military equipment, etc.
Yes.
So India didn't condemn it, and India's position was very legitimate because many of the Western countries also, let me tell you, that they continue to import gas from Russia. And not only that, the second argument is that India also in a way favored the stability of oil price by importing oil from Russia, because otherwise Europe and India would have been competing for the Gulf oil and the price would have gone to sky.
Right.
So in a way, India didn't want that kind of situation. That would have led to global inflation. So India in a way played a role in stabilizing the price of oil, and which also benefited European country.
Right.
So I think India's position not to join the sanctions regime was justified. India's position to import oil was very justified. And in a way, India also provided the leadership in the global southern countries.
Right.
After India took a very neutral position, many countries in the globe, especially in the global south, they started taking the same kind of position, be it Brazil, be it South Africa, number of countries in Africa and Asia.
Right.
So India provided some kind of leadership in taking a very neutral
stance over this and a more practical approach, and said that India is always on the side of peace. But Professor, what about the Chinese factor in this war? Has it support, China's support for Russia, along with that of North Korea? North Korea, of course, went ahead and gave support in return for sensitive defense technology, and that was the kind of deal they cracked with Russia. But have these two tilted the balance in any way in the war?
Well, Russia couldn't have survived, let me tell you, without Chinese support, and also from the support of the countries of the global south, India included.
Right.
These countries didn't join the sanction regime, so Russia continued to export oil and gas and other things to China and global southern countries. But China is very close partner. China didn't supply military weapons to Russia. So that's one thing. And China has also not recognized the territories that Russia has occupied in Ukraine. So it's not a complete support, but again, China stayed with Russia. China never condemned Russia. And without Chinese support, Russian economy would not have survived, partly because, the Western countries stopped supplying all the technology to Russia. So in that, Russia didn't have many choice. India was not the country which could have supplied that kind of technology. So Russia depended largely on China for semiconductor, for other chips, etc. And it came through different routes, not only directly from China, but also it came through the route of Central Asia, etc. So China played a very vital role in supporting Russia. And it's not a kind of military alliance, I'll say, but there is a very close proximity, close kind of alignment between the two countries.
So, but now at now year 3 of this war, Professor, what would a realistic end of the war look like? Is there a diplomatic resolution even possible at this stage, you think?
Are you talking about this Gaza war also?
No, I'm talking about Russia-Ukraine war. Do you see it realistically ending with a diplomatic solution? How close are we to that even happening?
Well, there is a difference between conflict management and conflict resolution. So what I see that, in Russia and Ukraine, it would be more like a frozen conflict where the war will stop. Certainly, I think, it's just a matter of time, probably when Trump and Putin did this, they decide to meet. So probably that would be the occasion when the war will probably end.
Right.
So war ending is a real possibility, but so far as conflict is concerned, remember that most of the European countries, even today, they are meeting in Ukraine and they are sanctioning Russia. So in that kind of situation, I do not see the conflict ending between either Europe or Russia or between Ukraine and Russia. But yes, the active war, what you see, that's likely to end with the kind of policies which are being pursued and with the kind of the agreements which are being signed between Trump and Ukraine and also between Trump and Russia. So
Yes.
ceasefire is a real possibility, but conflict resolution is, I'll not say that is going to resolve the conflict.
It's not going to resolve the conflict, but we may see an end to the war. Well, 3 years on, this war remains one of the biggest unresolved conflicts of our time to date, and the battlefield has seen shifts in momentum. There have been a decisive end, but as far as the decisive end right now, if you're asking, then like the professor is saying, it remains elusive. With the return of Trump, of course, his fresh approach, global power dynamics, changing, yes, but for India, that balancing act continues, walking that fine line between strategic interests and global diplomacy. But thank you, Professor Rajan Kumar, for joining us with your insights and perspective on this ongoing war. Whether this war drags on, finds a resolution, it will all depend on a complex web of geopolitical maneuvers. But one thing is clear, its impact is not just confined to the borders of Ukraine and Russia, and the ripple effects will shape global politics and economies, and that perhaps we'll see for years to come. But thanks again for joining us on India Tonight. Appreciate it.